Hello, everybody. Welcome to this month's Deal Clinic Live. I'm super pleased to introduce one of our newest agents. She's very seasoned in what she does, and her name is Helen Perry. She's the director of the Property Equation. We also have with us Bruce Mannering from Bond Finance Limited, and we have one of our own investors, Tim Saunders, here, who will be asking questions on behalf of you investors out there. We are going live from various locations, and this is November, so this is actually our 1 year anniversary. So happy birthday, Deal Clinic Live. So welcome to the investors that we have joining with us already. It's lovely to have you here with us. I'm just going to read out your names if I can manage those. So we have with us Ajay Patel, Ahmed Humar, Baljinder Mal, I hope I have pronounced your name correctly, James Edwards, Mark Rees, Nigel Richards, Sarah Matthews, Vera Kufi, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly too. Yogesh Patel and Zora, our very own Zora. Lovely to have you all here with us. So thank you for that. Welcome to watching the show live with us. And for those of you that will join and watch the replay, welcome too. Now, the whole show will be available on our YouTube channel, Sourcing Investments, so feel free to rewatch as well. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop your comments or your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box. I will be keeping an eye on both of those zones for you. If you are watching on the replay, please do email us any questions at admin@sourcinginvestments.co.uk. Now, I do encourage you to interact with our investor, with our power team member, which is from finance, and our very own sourcing agent, Helen Perry. So please do interact. It's the best way to find out exactly what the deal involves and what's on the table in front of you. So without further ado, let me just quickly introduce you to our panelists today. Before I forget, for those of you that aren't registered to the platform, obviously you can view this and view it in our YouTube channel later on. But for those of you that wish to register to the platform, it is sourcinginvestments.co.uk/investor-registration. So today's panel, I'm super pleased to introduce one of our newest agents. New, but that doesn't mean fresh, as in doesn't know what she's doing. She's very seasoned in what she does. And her name is Helen Perry. She's the director of the Property Equation. So we'll be seeing her deals later on. We also have with us Bruce Mannering from Bond Finance Limited, one of our power team. Hello, Bruce. And we have one of our own investors, Tim Saunders, here, who will be asking questions on behalf of you investors out there. But please do feel free to enter your comments and your questions in the Q&A and chat box. And then there's myself, Bonnie Marshall from Sourcing Investments, your host. Okay, so without further ado, I'm just going to give you a quick brief intro on, so there are plenty of you joining today. So welcome Jeff, Kitty, May, Michelle, Bentham, plenty more joining. I'm just going to, and David Postles, welcome all of you. So without further ado, Helen is actually the director of the Property Equation. Now, the Property Equation business company is a sourcing company, and it's a very people-based business, incredibly so, that their number one priority is customer service. And they have said that, you know, to keep them on check if you feel that they're slipping in certain aspects with that. Now, the Property Equation was born as a result of Helen's passion for property and for property sourcing investment deals for themselves, and her love for Cambridgeshire and North Yorkshire. Now, that extends now to the point where she wants to and loves to actually do for others what she does for herself and her own family. They source in Cambridge, Peterborough, Huntingdon, Kettering, just amongst a few. And they look after multi-lets, HMOs, buy-to-lets, serviced accommodation, and they also look for flips as well. Anything that really can get you a great deal. So without further ado, I'm going to play you a beautiful bio. Now, you may have already seen this, but this is of of the property equation and Helen, so bear with me while I share my screen. Okay, and here we go. Let me just minimize that.
Helen Perry. I wanted to do a short video for you today to introduce you to the property equation, what we do. So we source properties for investors who are looking to increase their wealth through property and essentially get higher returns with their money than they would do in the bank. There are many ways we can do this. There are many property strategies, which include buy-to-lets, HMOs, serviced accommodation, all of which and more are available in the areas that we source property in. Those areas are Cambridgeshire and North Yorkshire, because we live in Cambridgeshire and I'm from North Yorkshire, so spend time in both of those areas. But we're actually investing in property ourselves in North Yorkshire. So we understand how it all works and certainly understand how to crunch numbers, and that is why we call the company the property equation. It's so important to get the numbers right. It's also really important to make sure we have high customer service standards. So if you choose to work with us, please make sure you hold us to account on that. That's super important for us. And you also may be wondering, how do we source the properties? Where do we find them? Well, we have multiple strategies for that. We go direct to vendor with our marketing. We have relationships with estate agents. We scrape the web for certain search terms. We find motivated sellers, and also it's really important to just do some follow up on some sales that may well fall through, which a lot do. So yeah, so if you're looking to invest in property and you like the sound of us, please do get in touch and we'll have a consultation call to make sure we really understand your requirements and we can then get started.
Okay, fabulous. So now I would love to hand over to Helen Perry of the Property Equation. Helen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. And thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to be able to join you and be the sourcing investments agent for today's deal clinic. And mega excited about sharing some deals with you, more importantly. But before I do, I thought I'd give you a little bit more information than what the video does about me before I get into the deals. So my background is that I have a sales background, commercial sales background, and I used to work for Mars Pet Care. And as part of that, I managed a team, managed a business unit within that, and was responsible for profit and loss accounts and delivering our targets, essentially. So numbers, negotiating, relationships is all part of what I used to do in the corporate world, and is something that I think transfers very well across into property sourcing and property investment. As you'd expect, I'm a fully compliant deal sourcer to be here today, and also fully trained as well. So I have been on deal packaging courses as well. And the video did allude to this. Let me just move out of the way. The video did allude to this, but yeah, I am kind of based in two places, so can source property deals in a couple of different regions, because I live just outside Cambridge in Cambridgeshire, but I'm from North Yorkshire, and we invest ourselves in North Yorkshire. I know the area really well up there, having lived there for 30 years. And it's just a lovely area to invest in. So one of the reasons we wanted to invest up there was because we wanted people to experience staying in North Yorkshire and the beauty of that county. I know I'm biased, I'm from there, but that's one of our reasons. So we invest in serviced accommodation, that's our strategy. Few main reasons for that. One is cash flow, so looking to kind of get as much cash flow from as fewer properties as possible. The other is I didn't fancy being a landlord, just didn't want to really deal with tenants, but happy to deal with management companies, of which we have a brilliant one that we use for both of our properties. So that's what those two kind of emblems are on the right hand side at the bottom, to say that we have got a contractor that we work with, and we also have a management company from a holiday let point of view that we work with as well. So lastly, on this slide, I just want to share as well some of the tools that I use to help with the sourcing of properties and also to help understand the deals and do some deal analysis. So Property Filter, I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's a great tool for really narrowing down your search on the web and not having to basically go on all the different portals separately. It's fantastic and saves a lot of time, and it's very efficient use of my time. And the Ultimate Property Dashboard gives me a lot of information, a lot of data, of which some of which I will share in the next few slides about the areas that we invest in, and essentially like the rental income that you get, whether that's on the up, whether it's going down, what's happening with property prices, and essentially what the demand is in those areas. It's a very useful tool as well. So I just wanted to introduce those to you because you'll see some of that coming through in the next few slides. So for today, I'm going to mainly focus on North Yorkshire. I know I said I source in Cambridgeshire, and specifically Scarborough, and a tiny bit on Harrogate if we have time at the end. So for those of you who don't know anything about Scarborough, it's a seaside town in North Yorkshire, beautiful town. It's the third biggest kind of settlement in North Yorkshire, so quite a big area, and has an awful lot going for it, which I'll go into in a second. And then Harrogate is inland. Sorry, I should have said Scarborough's close to the North Yorkshire moors. Harrogate is closer to the North Yorkshire Dales, but also very close to the A1. So good transport links and accessibility links into Harrogate. So why should you invest in Scarborough? And indeed, why are we investing in Scarborough? Well, because Scarborough is on the up, is probably the best way to put it. So it has and is growing as a town in terms of its investment that's being ploughed into it. And you can see on here, just from some of the newspaper articles that I've kind of snipped and put it into this slide, how much investment is being ploughed into Scarborough. This is twofold. This is to continue to boost the tourism economy, which is obviously massive for this area, but equally it's really important for the council to ensure that people want to live and work in this area as well, and that there are other jobs not just related to tourism for people staying and living there, especially young people, hence why they're looking to become a cyber security hotspot as well. It has a big hospital with a nursing training centre, and that's receiving some investment as well. And as I say, there's more investment going into the tourism side too. So what kind of strategies work well in Scarborough? Well, buy-to-lets, HMOs, flip and or title splits, because there's some beautiful Victorian buildings in this area, all under kind of one freehold, which are ideal for title splitting. And then obviously serviced accommodation, given it's a tourist destination. Has a population of 64,000, and in terms of employment, manufacturing, retail, and health are the big ones, and there are some big companies that are based in Scarborough as well. I've mentioned the hospital. It does have direct links to York and Leeds. It's about an hour drive to York and about an hour and a half drive to Leeds. And then on the bottom, on the right-hand side, are just some of the tourist kind of highlights, if you like, if you were going to go and stay in Scarborough. There's plenty to do there. You're not short of things to see. And there's also Europe's largest open-air theatre there, which attracts names such as Tom Jones, George Ezra, Christina Aguilera. And when there's those big names in town, obviously you can imagine how full the service accommodation is in Scarborough. So here is just a few more stats on the area. Scarborough split into two main postcodes. One is YO11, one is YO12. In YO11, you can see the population, the household numbers, and the average household income. It is a lower than average household income area, but that doesn't mean it's not a highly affordable place to live, because house prices are quite cheap in this area, certainly compared to the surrounding area, which is one of the reasons why we've chosen to invest in this area as well. You can see in this postcode, 1 and 2 people households is the kind of biggest occupancy. So YO11 is more central, and it's the smaller properties that deliver the higher yields. And this is just an example, actually, this is an example of a 3-bed property and what the rent and sales affordability would be. So basically that's saying for sales affordability, the property would be, the price that you're paying for a property is 8.5 times the average income for a 3-bed property. And the Ultimate Property Dashboard gives me this information across all the different postcodes. So if anybody wants to know any more stats on different postcodes, do come to me as well and ask me that question, and we can have a look and analyse some different areas. But essentially, this just shows you where the highest yield comes from here. So 1 and 2 bed properties in the bottom, and then also what the demand is for those properties and the growth over time as well. And as I said, Scarborough's been in growth for a period of time. We are seeing a slight slowdown across the whole market, the whole country. So that 1% the last year is nothing to be concerned about. I'm more interested in kind of the longer term projections for this area. And YO12 is very similar. Like I said, it's just more residential. So I'll just put all of those on in one go. And has a higher average occupancy than YO11 in the properties. So it's actually 2 beds that have the higher yields in this area. So just a quick update on our property in Scarborough before I get on to the deals. So this is our investment in Scarborough. It's a 3-bed maisonette that we've purchased earlier on this year, and we're converting it into 2 1-bed apartments. So you can see we're about halfway through it now. We had to apply for planning permission, obviously, to do this. We're putting a dormer window in the top to open up that top floor and create a beautiful space for people to stay. So with this one, this is our second project. It's a bit of a longer term timeline to get it turned around and up and running. So I suppose you have to factor that in depending on what we're looking at from a project point of view. And certainly if it involves planning, it does take a lot longer. But essentially the aim with this is that we'll leave 40k in the deal, and it will deliver us 33% return on our investment. So essentially we'll get our money back pretty quickly out of this one over time, with it being a serviced accommodation holiday let. So that's enough about Scarborough in terms of, one more slide actually. While we're talking SA and holiday lets, this is just an example of the forecasts that we receive from the management company. So we can provide them with the property details, and they will then give us a projection based on the data that they have. They've got multiple properties that they rent out all over the area and wider than Yorkshire, that they can then look at history and look at performance of those properties to predict forwards what the property will do. So this is our projection for the 1-bed flats in Scarborough. So this is just for one 1-bed flat. And you can see for year 1, the operating profit down here is 8k. Year 2, just it jumps up and onwards. And the main reason they jump up is because obviously the occupancy increases due to return people coming back, direct bookings, and also the average rate increases per night as well as it becomes more established. So on to the first live deal. So let me just move on to the portal to share this in more detail.
Helen, before we go into that was brilliant. I loved seeing your own deal, by the way. So it's always interesting as an investor, an agent who's already investing and turning around property in that location as well, because it's a really good sign that they lead by example and actually walk the talk. So I love that. Thank you so much. We have a question from Yogesh Patel. So do you think a recession will change the ROI you are getting over the next 2 years? This might be a question for Bruce actually, but what do you think, Helen?
So I suppose the question is it based on what's it based on? Are you thinking about the cost side of things, so bills that we're covering and the mortgage that we're covering and all of that, or are you thinking about what will happen to the top line, i.e. will people want to stay in serviced accommodation, full stop? So I'll answer both those questions if you like, from my point of view.
Yeah, and then he's just typed in occupancy levels.
Okay, fine. No, I don't, because actually I think there'll be, we've seen that fewer and fewer people have been able to travel abroad because of COVID, and there was lots of talk about that would move back to people being able to go in abroad, but actually it's still a hassle, it's still a pain. There isn't the staff at the airports, etc., so there's still all the delays, and actually we're not seeing any drop off in terms of people wanting therefore to go on holiday in this country. So no, I don't from that point of view. The bit that I am more concerned about is the squeeze on the profit, which will come, but then it's a case of you know, the prices need to go up accordingly to kind of balance that out.
And as with anything with property in the industry, you know, we ride that wave. You know, every industry has a peak and trough. Every industry has a peak and trough. So beautiful. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And I can see Tim has his hand up. Yes, please do go for it, Tim.
Yeah, on that, I agree with Helen that I think many people aren't able to afford to go abroad as the inflation increases. So I think people doing staycations are going to be more and more. So I think there's ripe for a serviced accommodation in this one.
Perfect.
I think making sure that the serviced accommodation is affordable as well. So yes, there's a market for high-end boutique and all of that, but actually, you know, who you're appealing to is really important, and you need to think about that when you're decorating the apartment and stuff as well, and how you set it up.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you both for that. Additionally, we have an anonymous attendee. The second link doesn't work. Just to let you know, that's to register specifically to Helen's window. If you already registered with Sourcing Investments as an investor, you would need a different email address. So just keep you posted on that. But if you're already an investor on Sourcing Investments platform, in order to register to Helen's window, you would need a separate email address, but you will be able to see Helen's window if you are already registered. So just keep me posted in the chat box, in the Q&A box with that. Thank you so much. Okay, Helen, back over to you. Thank you so much for that.
Okay. So yeah, so the first deal I wanted to share today is a 1-bed flat in Scarborough. So purchase price for this is 62,000, and the rent for this property is £440. This would be a buy-to-let property, straightforward buy-to-let, and that would give a gross yield of 8.52%. So this is a property that is based on the North Bay. It's very close to the beach. It's actually a really beautiful location. It's a beautiful building. There are 10 flats in this block, and it's the one on the bottom floor that you can see there, not the basement floor, but the one just up the steps on the right. It's a small flat. It's only 35 square meters, but it's EPC C, so it's ready to go from that point of view as well. And the lease remaining is 168 years, so you've got a good long lease left on that property too. Now you could, and I have asked if you could use this for serviced accommodation, and yes you could, so the freeholder allows that, so there is that option as well with this flat too. Any questions specifically on this deal?
No questions from our investors online yet, but Tim, I can see you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick one with serviced accommodation in this area. I've got a couple of flats in Scotland that I'm going to SA, and I need to get licenses to be able to do that. Is there any licenses coming in for Scarborough?
No, and there has been obviously quite a lot of talk about this in the press recently, hasn't there, as well? And there are certain hotspots that they're really clamping down on, but Scarborough isn't one at the moment, because it is, as I said, one of the biggest kind of settlements, so there's quite a lot of properties available, if you like, to still go after. And as I said, like, there is actually a shortage of really good quality serviced accommodation in this area, which is another reason for us to want to invest in it too. So Whitby's pretty saturated, Robin Hood's Bay is really saturated, you know, you've got Brunswick Bay, you've got Filey. There's a lot of holiday lets in those areas, but there isn't here, and there's actually more to do in Scarborough, I think, as well. Good
to know. Lovely. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And we have some questions for you, Helen. They're coming in thick and fast.
Now they're coming in. Okay.
So we have a question from Yogesh Patel. Thank you, Yogesh. You're very interactive, and we do encourage this. Is there any planning laws against serviced accommodation like in London?
No, I think that's the same. Is that a similar question to what Tim just asked, or is there?
I think so. Just to make sure.
No, there isn't. As I said, I mean, I think there will be a clampdown on the quality of serviced accommodation and making sure that, you know, things like they are fire safety protected and all of that kind of thing, and you know, people essentially staying in them are going to be well looked after and safe. So we'll have to make sure we're ticking all of those boxes, as we should anyway, as responsible landlords and lettings. So yeah, but not from a licensing point of view.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Yogesh. I hope that answers your question. We have a question from Ruchi. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Is it furnished?
This one? No. So that would be, if you did want to turn it into a holiday let, you would need to furnish it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then Yogesh has another question. How did you find good managing agents via Airbnb or other sites?
So we actually stayed in a property before we bought our first investment property, and the property we stayed in was managed by the agent we use. So we were like, well, we really like them. Let's have a look at them, because we looked at a few. So you'll have heard of like lots of the big nationals, but this is actually a bit of a smaller one. And at the time we started working with them, they were a lot smaller than they are now. So obviously they've had a big increase as well over the last couple of years. So I wanted to support someone who was local and trying to build their business as well. And when someone's I suppose slightly newer into the game, they're obviously keener to do a better job, I think, as well. So it's worked pretty well. We've already got one live already, and as I said, the Scarborough one's going to go live very soon. So far so good with them. So that's how we found them.
Amazing. And I do find that that's very similar when we have bespoke companies setting up. There is always an endeavour to make sure that our clients don't feel like a number.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more care and consideration taken. So I love that. And I love that you actually did a collaboration to help local businesses. I think that's really important as well. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Cam Patel, hello, lovely to have you here. Can you share the URLs for the two systems you mentioned, Helen? I think we're talking here about Property Filter and...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if you Google them, you'll find them, but I can do for sure. I can share some links after this.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And then I did say they're coming in thick and fast. The remaining 9 flats in the property, are they all occupied? This is from Rushi.
Oh, I don't know is the answer to that question.
So Rushi, maybe a bit of due diligence there, and you could do a little bit of investigating and see, as you know, you've seen the pictures, you'll be able to find the block of flats. They're in Scarborough, and maybe have a look and keep us updated yourself. That would be awesome.
I can, yeah, and obviously I can ask and find out as well if you want to message me separately, and if you're really interested in the deal and that's something you want to know, then yeah, I can find out.
So that's brilliant. So there, Helen's offered her help there. So Rushi, if you use the link that I've put in the chat box, it's the second link there, I'll share it again. That will allow you to get connected to Helen, and you'll be able to put those questions forward to her and start comms directly with Helen herself. I hope that answers your question. We have another question from Kim Rivet. Is there any limit to the time someone can stay in a serviced accommodation?
I can answer that one.
Yeah, go on, Bruce. There is.
I can answer that one. So basically, anything over 6 months sort of falls under the AST route you should be going. So you can do short lets for up to 6 months with one person. Anything more than that, they should really be on an AST.
And for it to qualify as a serviced accommodation, from a tax point of view, I think there's a minimum amount of days it has to be let out for, and all of that as well, and available for. So I don't have it off the top of my head, but I know it. I've got it written down somewhere, so I can share that.
Perfect. That's brilliant. So Kim, if you want more information with regards to that, please do feel free to connect with Helen, and she'll be happy to help you with regards to that. So I hope that helps you on that one. Okay, we have a question in from Sarah Matthews. Is there a management agent? If do SA, as we do not live in the area?
Yeah, that's who we use, because ours is totally hands-free, hands-off.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I hope that answers your question, Sarah. So they do use a very local management agent, so that's all sorted, hassle-free. Another question from Rushi. I'm also curious to know the kind of people who are living in and around the area, especially in this building, their work profession, as they can have an impact on people who want to rent. Again, I think maybe that's a conversation to have directly with Helen, and maybe a little bit of investigation, due diligence work there, Rushi. So again, please do connect with Helen. She has already offered to help you with regards to some of that. It's exciting. I always find it exciting to be able to do that little work. It's like it's like following breadcrumbs, isn't it? It gets you to the treasure. So I do enjoy that.
It sounds from the questions as well, there's a lot of energy around serviced accommodation, but I didn't just want to have properties in here that are serviced accommodation, so you could do that with this one, or you could just do standard buy to let as well. So yeah, it will work for both.
Okay, amazing. So some people are asking for the link again. I will share that for you. And Yogesh Patel says, do you claim capital allowance for the serviced accommodations?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, awesome. And then do you charge cleaning to the tenants?
So again, this is all part of the management setup. So if I don't need to go back to the slides, but as part of that forecast that I shared that they'll provide, they'll tell you what the cleaning costs are for that property, and then they'll also tell you, so as you know, if you go and book a property on Airbnb or booking.com, and by the way, this management company puts it on all of the different platforms, you do get charged a cleaning fee if you book that property, but there is always a gap between what you're charged as a guest and then what the actual cost of the cleaning is, if you see what I mean. So I think in the Scarborough flat example for us, the charge will be £50 when someone stays over as the cleaning fee on top of the nightly rate fee. But then the cleaning fee for us will probably be, I think it's about 80, something like that, 80, £90. So yeah.
Yeah, so I do hope that answers your question. As I know, I'm already in a bit of an Airbnb at the moment. I'm in a different location to usual, and so yes, they do, as Helen just mentioned, there is a cleaning cost that they actually advertise there, but then to the actual investor or landlord of the property, again, there may be the separate charge there. So again, do read the T's and C's for Airbnb, because each service provider will be slightly different as well. Okay.
Yeah.
One last question from Yogesh Patel. Do you claim capital allowances for your serviced accommodations?
Yeah, we've just covered that, but yes.
Did we? Apologies.
Yes. That's all right.
I'm reading these questions.
You're trying to keep up with them all. There's so many.
A lot coming through. Okay, awesome. All right, perfect. Helen, please do proceed. Thank you so much for your patience.
Did Bruce want to talk about this one in terms of?
We're running out of, I mean, I can go into the presentation I'll give, but I can give a quick oversight of this property and what sort of funding is available for foreign nationals. Unfortunately, most lenders who lend to foreign nationals want to be lending over 75 to 100,000. So we are limited on properties which are worth less than 100,000, and even less than 75. So on this one, I'll probably go to Together Money if they're a foreign national. If they're not a foreign national, Foundation Home Loans may lend on this via a limited company or in the personal name. Rates have gone up considerably due to Lizzie's mini budget. Swap rates were 3.5%. They rose up to 5.5%, but they're now coming back down to 4.09%. So I expect after the budget next week, I expect a lot more lenders in the marketplace, and there'll be a lot more lenders available to lend on this type of property. But it is a bit nichey, basically because of the value of the property. Not many lenders want to lend.
Thank you, Bruce.
Pleasure.
Right, let me share the next one.
It's a very good yield there.
Yeah,
8.5% is a very good yield for a single let. I'm impressed with that.
Yeah, and as I said, it's smaller properties that work best for yield in this area. Yes. Why can I not? Oh, here we go.
Okay, so Helen, just
working.
Yes, I can see 5-bed block. Sarah Matthews has asked, do you source rent-to-rent deals?
Yes, but I haven't had a lot of them. But if I find any, yes, I will put them out there.
Amazing. And then Fiona has asked, do you need a special mortgage for serviced accommodation? So I think that's best to come to you, Bruce, with regards to that.
Yes, you do. You do. You've typically got, most lenders want you to rent out a property on an AST. If you do serviced accommodation or holiday lets, if it's a holiday let, you're going to get high, medium, and low seasons. If it's serviced accommodation, you generally, the areas they are at, you're generally inner cities, and you're probably going to get a standard rate throughout the year. There are, off the top of my head, about 6-7 lenders which lend on serviced accommodation if you're UK national, and I've got at least 3 lenders which will lend if you are an overseas national. They'll specifically allow you to short let it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I hope that answers your questions. Helen, back to you.
Okay, so the next deal I wanted to share with you is this 5-bedroom block of flats in Scarborough. So I mentioned earlier that there are a lot of these types of flats in Scarborough, all on one freehold. So essentially this is the building in the middle on 4 floors. It's basically 3 1-bed flats and 1 2-bed flat in the block. And the purchase price is $230 for the 4 flats altogether. And it's currently rented out today, so it's tenanted. All four flats are tenanted, generating a yield of 8.54%. So the splits on those flats is £425 per month, 400, and then 450, and then one of them is broken down into a weekly fee. But essentially, yeah, it all comes to just over £20,000 rent for the year. So what else did I want to say about this flat? So they are larger flats than the one I just shared. So the last one was 35 square meters. The smallest one in this block is 47. So they are worth more as well individually, if you like, as flats, which then leads me on to the title split point. So this isn't or couldn't be title split straight away as a purchase when you buy it, because it does need some work doing to the utilities to split those first and foremost. But once that work is done, so if you did buy this and sat on it for a bit, did a bit of work to it in terms of sorting out the utility splits, and then decided to do the title split and split the flats off into separate leases, it would be worth, I think, the total GDV value, even in the condition they're in now, which is just standard buy-to-let condition, would be worth 308,000. So there's about 78k profit in just doing that, but you would have to hold it and do a little bit of work to it first, rather than being able to do that straight away. But it's a great opportunity for that. I think it's a great sort of holding deal, and also generating you an immediate income straight away as well. So yeah, and I think from a work, like I said, from a work point of view, you'll see on the platform I have put on here, it needs a little bit of work. So there's a bit of work needed to the back of the property. The rendering needs fixing on the outside, and then there's a flat roof that just needs sorting out as well. So I've put in their estimated cost for that would be about £2,500, and then costs to do the utility splits would be about £3,000. There would then be, if you did want to go down the title split route, additional legal costs on top of that as well, which would be approximately about 7,000, something like that. But yeah, I think it's in a great location, again, in the same place as the other one, just down the road, actually very close to the beach. If I was buying it, if I had the cash right now, what I would do is I would sit on it, and then as and when the tenants decided to leave, I would refurb each flat and then do the title split on it, and then actually rent it out as serviced accommodation would be my plan with this property. So yeah, any other questions on that?
Yes, we do. We have questions. And actually, Bruce, I have one of my own.
Okay.
So we have a question from Yogesh. So valuation, can you clarify the value, how they were valued for rent and market value? So basically, I think Yogesh is asking, was it valued on bricks and mortar or commercial? And where do you get the rent from? I think rent valuation from.
Okay,
so
sorry. After you, Helen.
So the market value is based on what kind of other blocks like this are going for in the area. So it's just doing some straightforward comparables on residential blocks exactly like this, so not commercial. And the rent is what they're paying now. So as I say, it's tenanted, so that's exactly what they're paying now. And actually they are due a rent increase as well. So that could be something that could be put forward in line with inflation, because it's been on the market for a few months now. They could have put the rents up, they didn't. They decided they wanted to sell instead, and so that could be something you could do if you take this block on.
Okay, and he's just mentioned he meant the SA, not the buy-to-let, so apologies.
On this one,
he said on the serviced accommodation, not on the buy-to-let.
I haven't done a serviced accommodation valuation on this one.
No, I think no, on the previous presentation.
I haven't on that one. I haven't on that one either. So I've not based them on, and personally I don't do that either, because I think about exit plan would be, well, I'd be selling it as a flat for someone to buy, maybe as a first time purchase or whatever. So I don't do SA in my numbers. I don't do the SA valuation and work it out from a commercial point of view. You could do, but I don't.
Yeah, you're not going to get a yield based valuation on a C3 property. Yes, if it's a C3 property under 30 square meters, and perhaps you've got a block of tiny little studio flats which can only be sold to an investor, you'll get a commercial yield based valuation. They're all over 30 square meters. You're going to get bricks and mortar. On a 5-bed like this, you may get an aggregate valuation with a bit of a block discount, which Helen mentioned. She's looked at other blocks in the area. They're selling for this sort of price. So it sounds to me fair price, because it's got some sort of block discount in there. Split the titles, you can then increase the value.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think that answers his next question, which was, how do you value a serviced accommodation for mortgage? And I think you've answered that. It's
bricks and mortar.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Bruce. Really appreciate that. Yogesh, I hope that answers your question. Have another question in from Kim Rivet. What type of tenants are currently in situ? And actually, Rushi would like to know this too.
So they are a mix of tenants. Let me just see if I can find it. I think one of them is I've forgotten what you call it. Is it social?
Social housing? Social service client.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the others are all private. So yeah.
Amazing.
I think the bottom flat, because I viewed it, the bottom flat was a couple, and the rest were all people living on their own.
Perfect. Okay. One last question from Yogesh, and I'm going to ask mine as well, Bruce. So he's asked, so you're not allowed to title split before utilities are split. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. My question is actually, Bruce, when investors are coming to you in order to find find and qualify for finance and investment and things like that, is it always helpful to know what their dream goal is of that property, i.e. in this example, going for the title split? So even though it's not something that will be done straight away, is it always best to disclose what they're looking to do further down in the project? Does that help you find the best?
100%, because they may need a bit more flexibility. They may need lower ERCs, early repayment charges, if they're looking to split later down the line. Will a lender allow them just to split them anyway, and put a charge on the leases and a charge on the freehold? Some commercial lenders allow that. So yes, if you give me all the information what you're planning to do, I would be able to then make the correct recommendation in terms of lenders and providers.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. I do hope that clarifies some questions out there. It definitely helps me. Helen, back to you, please.
So if there's no more questions on this property, I'll move on to just talk quickly about Harrogate. So I'll move back to my presentation.
just while you're doing that, Helen, I just want to speak to the investors who are still messaging. The questions that you have are not specifically for this property or the other property that Helen has actually advertised and walked you through. What I would encourage you to do is actually use the links. I will share them again so that you can connect with Helen and ask those, because those are general sourcing agent and estate agency questions, and she'll be more than happy to connect with you and chat about that further. Okay.
Okay, so really quickly on Harrogate, because I'm conscious of time. So a bit like when I talked about Scarborough, why would you invest in Harrogate? So Harrogate is a much more affluent area. So it's quite relatively wealthy, but it's still affordable. So again, I've been looking to try and find pockets within the areas that I source in where you kind of go, okay, what's going on with house prices and actually what's going on with rents, and does it make sense, and can we find some deals that work in these areas versus some of the ones that are very, very inflated in terms of property prices. So Harrogate, to a lot of people who know the area, would go, wow, a property price is not really expensive there. They're actually not as expensive as you would think. And it's in terms of how big it is. So you can see on here, population 67,000 within the HG area. There's a lot of businesses located in and around Harrogate. It has 2 major event centres. It has a big hospital, and it's obviously doing a lot to encourage kind of more businesses to establish and set up in the area as well, with these 2 new sites on the left-hand side here. A bit like, it's very, the architecture, some of it is actually very like Scarborough. It's an old Victorian town, and therefore some very high, 3 and 4 story buildings. So you can see why I've been looking at these areas. But you can do buy-to-lets, you can do SAs, you can flips, and you can do title splits in Harrogate. That's what it's good for. It's, as I said, located more inland, 13 miles away from Leeds Bradford Airport, and has close links to York and Leeds and beyond. And yeah, so I just wanted to touch on Harrogate. And one of the reasons I wanted to touch on Harrogate is because I do, as Bonnie said at the start, have a deal that's in the pipeline in this area, that's slowly coming to fruition. But yeah, you can just see from these stats, especially I'm just picking out HG2 here as a postcode because that's where the deal is actually going to be. It is still a really affordable place to live and work based on house prices. And in terms of work and where the majority of people sort of work, it's in healthcare, it's in education, it's in retail, but it is a more sort of family 3+ occupied area than Scarborough was. So there's more individuals living in flats in Scarborough versus Harrogate. And it has also had, like Scarborough, some really buoyant growth over the last few years. And I just wanted to share the deal, our first deal. So this is our property that we have set up just outside Harrogate in a place called Massam in HG4. This is the postcode. So this is our first serviced accommodation, where we started working with the letting agent, or the holiday let agent that we currently now partner with. And you can see, so this was a much quicker turnaround versus the one I was just showing in Scarborough. So we didn't have to do a lot to this property, and basically we just needed to give it a lick of paint and essentially furnish it and sort out the garden. So it was a very quick turnaround from purchase to go live and getting the first guests through the door, which was really good from a profitability point of view. We picked this small little town because it has some great tourist attractions and breweries right on the doorstep, but it's also really easy to get to. And in our first full year running this property, we've generated £1,500 cash flow a month from it, which has been great. So these are just the after pictures. So as you can see, we've basically just tarted it up, but not had to do anything fundamental or structural to it. No planning permission or anything like that. And yeah, really, really happy with how it's going. I think the lesson that I would have for this is, before I started getting really educated into property, was that we probably ploughed a bit too much money into this upfront in terms of what we're sitting on here. But as I say, we're happy with the returns, and it's much higher than what we would have been getting had that money just been sat in the bank. And really happy with the fact that we've managed to find, contractors who will do work for us in this area as well, and also the letting company too. And so this is just a bit of a sneaky peek, a bit of a teaser of the pipeline deal that I've got coming in HG2. So basically it's a 3-bed flat. I won't go into too much detail, but it's a large flat, which is what caught my eye, and it needs a full refurb. So yeah, look out for this one, hopefully coming soon. So just negotiating on the price on this one. And the last couple of things I just wanted to say were, talked about Scarborough, I've talked about Harrogate. There are some other areas in the north that are not too far away, depending on the strategy that you want to purchase property using, if you like. So if it's buy to let, for example, these postcodes here, so Redcar and Middlesbrough, are, you know, when I look at the ultimate property dashboard data, these are some of the areas where, for example, 3-bed family homes will generate you the biggest yield actually from a lot of the areas that I source in. So I can also source areas source properties in these areas if it's 3-bed buy-to-lets that you're looking for families. And then just as a quick one, as Bonnie said right at the start, I also source in Peterborough, Cambridge, Huntingdon and the surrounding areas as well, based in the south, which is very close to where I live. So I just want to say thank you very much for listening to me today, and thank you for all the questions. I really appreciate it. And I'll hand back over to Bonnie.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Helen. We've just had a couple of questions that have come into the chat box. Well, it's actually one from Fiona. Fiona, I love it, Fiona. She's mentioned Harrogate's also a posh commuter belt for Leeds. I love that. Thank you, Fiona.
In the golden triangle.
It really is. So thank you. That's perfect. Another question from Yogesh. So this actually is for you, Bruce. Can you answer this mortgage question, please? For serviced accommodation, if it's a buy-to-let rent limits lending, I think that's meant to be is, buy-to-let rent limits lending through stress tests, do they then take into account serviced accommodation rent? And if so, where do they find serviced accommodation rent?
Right, so most lenders will just work off the AST rent, okay? There's only a handful which will work off the high, medium, low if it's a holiday let. If you are looking at service accommodation, they'll ask for agents' letters to what they reckon they can get the property rented out for. But there's probably 1 or 2 lenders which will go off the SA and holiday let rent as is. Most will go off the AST. I've struggled in the likes of Devon and Cornwall in the past because of this factor. The local rents are so low and the property prices are so high, you're struggling to get anything above 60-65% loan to value. The other caveat is if it is an existing holiday let already or service accommodation, you can sometimes provide 2 to 3 years worth of accounts and the lender will go off that income, but it will need to be an existing service accommodation or holiday let. But 8 out of 10 times it's the AST income only.
Okay, perfect. So I hope that answers your question, Yogesh. So thank you so much for that. We've had another question come through from Sarah Matthews. How does Cambridgeshire's ROI compare to North? And can you tell us about any current deals you are offering in Cambridgeshire and Huntingdon?
Thank you for the question. So it's harder to get as good a yield, I should say, in the south, obviously, versus the north. But that doesn't mean there aren't like flip opportunities, for example, or like added value opportunities. So some of the deals that I've been looking at, I've got like extra land next to it, or you could extend the property and that kind of thing. I did advertise a deal a few weeks ago, it's gone now, it was a 3-bed semi-detached property and you could turn it into 4 flats, and exactly the opposite the property had done exactly the same thing. So it had already happened, the precedent had already been set. And yeah, that was available just outside or just on the edge of Cambridge. So one of the reasons I love doing this job is because it's so diverse. There's so many different deals and different ways of stacking opportunities. So I don't just focus on SA, I don't just focus on buy to let, I look at where you could add value and look at properties in different ways. So Yeah, and that's where also I'm actually spending a bit more time thinking about like lease options and that kind of thing. So purchase lease options, and like say someone asked a question about rent to rent. So I think there'll be more of those coming up too, where people can't sell or don't want to sell at the price that people are willing to pay. And then it's a case of, okay, well then how can we take control of that property and make some money from it in the meantime, and you're happy with the price in 5 years' time kind of thing. So yeah, to answer your question, it's not as great as yield, but there are still opportunities that would, for example, generate you just as much profit. You just have to put more money down, more money into it to get those profits. And that's essentially why we invest up north, because it's a lower entry point, essentially.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And that really helps. And I think as well, the other thing to remember is to remind the investors what your strategy is, your exit plan is, because not everybody's exit plan is the same. And to really, when you have that, to really stick by it, because if you start to fluctuate on one deal, you'll realize that you fluctuated on all your deals. So to really hold yourself true and strong to your exit strategy. And if it changes because your circumstances have changed, that's fine, but not to change just because you think the deal looks juicy, as I like to say. So hold true to your strategy and hold true to your exit plan, because that's really key, because then you won't mess up your figures. The figures will always give you your path. I do have a question for you actually, Helen. So with regards to being an agent and sourcing, what is the thing? So when these investors start to reach out to you, what will help you the most in order to find them their best deal that works for their strategy and their exit plan? What would you need from them?
Well, essentially what you just said, so being really clear on the strategy. So what is it you're looking for? What are your break points, if you like? So yeah, as much information as you can say, I don't want this, but I do want that. That really helps. And then once you're clear on that, I suppose it's then just been, stress testing that a little bit and going, okay, now is that really true? Because this might be quite difficult, and therefore that might mean you don't find anything. So what are you prepared to concede on, and that kind of thing? Yeah, and I think a lot of people talk about like no money down deals or all your money out deals and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's not, you don't have to do that. Like, I think, personally for me, I think getting your money back out after 2 or 3 years, and that's like a measure that I use, like, it is a bit probably more of a responsible way of doing it, a bit more long-term thinking, because essentially for me, that's what property is. It's a long-term play. And we will together then factor in any risks, any challenges, we'll properly stress test it to make sure that it does that. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
That's brilliant. And I'd like to come in with Bruce. And I think that's really important to remember, that it is a long play game. There really isn't no get rich quick overnight scheme, and property is the same. And to remember that, the overnight scheme is probably 2 to 3 years, if not longer. And to really hold that in mind. Yes, there are people out there that are turning around and flipping and making profit, but for a long play game, it's, I consider business a bit like running a marathon. You got to have stamina and there's duration, and to really look at your investing with those things in mind. So I hope that helps. Bruce, would you like to add anything to that at all?
I totally agree. It's very unrealistic to try and get all your money back out unless you do big planning applications where you're going to get huge uplift in values. On these light to medium refurbs, most of my clients are happy with a 20 to 30% ROI, and you can build a nice portfolio, not rush it, and nice and steady, get your foundations right, with single lets, maybe a bit of SA, then maybe go on to your first HMO or your MUB, multi-unit buildings. And I see people building up their portfolios a bit like a pyramid. You've got your solid foundation, single lets and SA at the bottom, and then you get a little bit more creative. So yeah, everything I'm hearing here is spot on.
Perfect. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And Tim, would you like to add anything to that as our investor on board here today?
Yeah, my experience has been exactly the same. That the ability to get all your money out is pretty unrealistic in terms of being sensible. So at the moment, I still leave a little bit of money in all my deals at the moment, and for me, it means my ROI is actually better at the moment than anything else. So yeah, I completely agree.
That is
You might have a
wonderful.
quicker turnaround then as well in terms of getting it set up and let and all the rest of it. Because if you're going for planning, it takes time. So your money's just sat there.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Actually, the property I'm in at the moment, we've got had the option to turn it into a 2-bed, but the ability to we need planning permission to do that. So actually, there's for our strategy at the moment, there's no need. It would give us some more money back out, but we want to get it cash flowing as quickly as we can. So yeah, this doesn't make sense.
That's the golden rule for any investment, especially if you've got a refurb, is get in and out as quickly as possible and get off the expensive refurb funding. Because if you start tinkering around with planning, all my developers who have tinkered with planning or trying to improve planning, they just eat into time, and that time is money. So always build, if you is planning in place to do something, just build out what you've got and don't get greedy.
100%. And we've had a question come in from Michael, and I think I would know what Bruce would say about this, but he said, is there any point in buy to let anymore? But for me, really, Michael, that depends on what your strategy and your exit plan are and what you're looking to achieve. We wouldn't be able to actually comment on that. That's a very personal goal as to what you would want to achieve and where you're looking to invest in, and whether that area drives that for you. So I would really look at what your goals are, look at what your strategy is, your exit plan, and if the area that you're investing in is actually going to deliver the results that you're looking for, and if it's not buy to let, maybe it might be a different strategy that you're comfortable with. I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question. Bruce, anything to add to that?
I'm struggling currently with the current rates to get 75% loan to value if it's down the southeast. North Yorkshire, I did a few calculations prior to this meeting, and at those yields of just circa 9%, it still works at 75%. If they're UK national, expat, or foreign national, I can still get 75% across the board in North Yorkshire. Okay, because the yields are good.
Yeah,
perfect.
Yield is key, isn't it, for buy to let right now? Yeah.
Correct.
Can I just add one more thing on that question from my point of view, like my personal opinion? Like, I think, is buy to let dead? Yes or no? It can't be, because people need houses to live in. So, like, we need to find a way to make it work. And one of the ways to make it work might be that we don't focus on cash flow. It might be that it just wipes its own face, but you've bought really well, and you know that in the long term you're going to get a lot of money back out of that property, and you'll see high capital growth as well. So I would think about those other kind of strategies around capital growth rather than just cash flow too.
100%. Look at all angles, I think, and see what really works and delivers the results that they're looking for. And as you mentioned, as economies change, as our global environment changes, we need to move with the change, because change is the one consistent that we always have on this planet. And so to know that change will happen, and to have that as a mindset that you will be able to move and adapt with the times and not be set in your ways. When we're set in our ways is when we tend to lose. So just to bear that in mind, Michael. So I hope that helps. Tim had your hand up. Tim, did you have anything to add to that? Sorry, with regards to the buy-to-let?
Yeah, just to say that I'm still going back to buy-to-let route. I've changed my strategy a little bit. I've changed my sort of purchase criteria, having a lot more money down to start with, but looking at smaller deals. So I've sort of pivoted, and pivot is the word, the COVID word, right? Being able to pivot your strategies a little bit. So for me, buy-to-let's still working, and I'm just changing my sort of game plan slightly for it. So that's all I had to add.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm really conscious of time. We've got I'm going to ask these two last questions. Sarah has said, do you have any lease option deals, Cambridgeshire? So I'll leave you to answer that.
Not yet. Okay. But that's always they're conversations I'm having. So, but nothing yet.
Brilliant. And the last question I'm going to ask is from an anonymous attendee. Does the platform allow you to meet briefs of investors, or do you find deals and leave it there? So this will answer a lot of questions that have come in. So no, you can actually connect with the agent and start a direct conversation, which I will show you now. Start a direct conversation and actually give your brief to that agent, specifically, especially if they're sourcing in the location that you would wish to invest in. So that option is there. So you have the ability to see everybody's deals, but you can also converse and connect and have a conversation directly with a specific agent who may be sourcing in a particular location that you're interested to invest in, and start to build that relationship there and start to give your brief and see what actually can be found and if that meets it there. So please do connect with Helen if it's something that you wish to do with Helen because of the deals that you've seen today, and start to have those discussions. So I hope that helps. I'm really conscious of time. So before I go any further, we've had plenty of investors thank us for today's session. They've said it's absolutely brilliant. So thank you all. I'm just going to, before I end the call, the show, I just want to be able to show other the investors how to, if my tech team goes all right here, how to actually find both Helen and Bruce. So I'm just quickly going to share my screen. I hope you can see that. So this is Helen's landing page here. Okay, this is her URL. Okay, so I've already dropped that into the chat box for yourselves, and feel free to connect with Helen. So if you want to connect with Helen and have those conversations, you would use this live chat button here. When you click on that, it will let you know that you are about to proceed a direct conversation. Helen, I'm going to proceed, otherwise you're going to get a message from myself. And the same with Bruce at Bond Finance. Okay, so when you scroll up, Bruce has his own live chat button. So again, you can connect with Bruce and his team here using the live chat button. Apologies, I don't know what's going on there. My internet, I hope, is still working. Here we go. So you can connect with Bruce here with the live chat button. And if you have any specifics that you wish to declare, you would literally just fill out this, information, and you will go to financial and then property information. So I really do hope that helps. So again, any questions that you feel you need to ask, and we're now going to close the show, feel free to contact us at admin@sourcinginvestments.co.uk or myself, Bonnie, at sourcinginvestments.co.uk. Other than that, please feel free to reach out to Helen at The Property Equation and Bruce at Bond Finance Limited. With that, I think Tim's internet connection has dropped out again. He was actually on location with one of his investment properties that they were doing renovation for. And if we had time, we would have been able to have a look at that. But unfortunately, we have run out and Tim's connection has dropped off as well. So with that, I would love to thank all the investors that have joined us live on this show. Feel free to watch the replay on our YouTube channel, Sourcing Investments. And also you'll see snippets of this going out on our social media across Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as well. All right, folks, thank you so much. And thank you to our presenters, to Helen Perry of The Property Equation and Bruce Mannering of Bond Finance Limited. And with that, I wish you all an amazing week ahead. Bye for now.